Welcome to the CEO Shift with your host, Shondell Spader, owner and CEO of Spader Group. In this series, you'll hear fast, focused conversations with business leaders and experts who've made the real shifts needed to scale past the plateau. Each episode delivers CEO-level insight in 15 minutes or less, because real growth doesn't need more noise, just better decisions.
Welcome to the CEO Shift. I am delighted to have Stephen Woessner of Predictive ROI here with us today. And for over 30 years, Stephen has worked in the trenches of agency new business strategy, working alongside and consulting with hundreds of agencies to fill their sales pipeline with a steady stream of right fit clients so they can sell more of what they do. Stephen founded Predictive ROI in 2009 and remains its CEO and co-owner, working alongside his business partner, Eric Jensen. Stephen hosts the Onward Nation and Sell with Authority podcasts with listeners in over 140 countries and 1,100 episodes. His agency's new business and marketing insights have been featured in major media, and he's the best-selling author of 5 books, including his latest entitled Sell with Authority. Stephen, thank you so much for being here today. I'm excited to talk with you and be able to share with our audience today.
Well, I'm grateful for the invitation. Thank you very much. And I'm looking forward to our time together too.
Awesome. Well, with that, I want to dive into one of the things that I absolutely love when I get to talk to you is I get to pick your brain. There's always so many great insights, and I really would love for you to share, as we're diving into our conversation today, that zone of genius, right? That expertise that you want to focus on, that you think could be helpful for our listeners today.
Mm. Well, as you know, predictive, our purpose and mission in life, if you want to call it that, is to serve agencies. And so your audience can think of, ad agencies, marketing agencies, PR agencies, digital SEO, that kind of stuff. That is our world. And so when I think of, my particular, what I would consider to be zone of genius, it all revolves around sales. And so what we say to the agencies in our community is that we help them sell more of what they do. And we're so sales focused because candidly, that's my background. That's something that Hannah Roth, our director of strategy, mad scientist here, who you know very well, she's aligned with sales. The psychology of sales is something that she really thrives and loves and helps our clients do. And Eric is the master of all things tech as it relates to supporting that. And candidly, we've really leaned into that, not just because it's something that we love to do from a genius perspective, but it's also something that's really, really needed. And
Yeah.
and so when I think about that, it's like when you think of, being able to then grow a business, I mean, how wonderful is that it aligns with your God-given gifts and talents, using your words, the zone of genius, and then also it's really needed and necessary from your audience. Well, that's a beautiful thing.
Right. Right. I absolutely love how you guys make it so that sales is like a positive, right? It's a
Mm,
place where people can get very comfortable. It's a place where natural conversations can truly happen in the way that you guys share, like how you go about it, right? It's not, hi, who are you? You have a need. I have your solution. Now buy from me,
mm.
right? It's truly that back and forth of building that relationship. That's one of my favorite things of the conversations that we've had. Um, it's no secret. I don't make it a secret anyway that I have worked alongside you guys for quite a while, and you guys have just made a huge difference in how we show up for folks.
Mm.
Um, and it's really shifted that whole process from being too transactional, in my opinion, right?
Mhm.
Pre-working together and things like that, to really diving in at a different level. And my favorite is when I'm surprised when somebody's like, "Okay, so tell me how I buy," and I'm like, "Oh yeah, that's right. Hold on, I got to get there."
But that's
So
when you know
it's
that you're running a good sales process, when
yeah,
it's transparent, when your prospective client says, "Now tell me, please, how can you help me?" And they're pulling you into closing the sale, because then obviously you're not closing at all. And that's a really wonderful thing when you can have a conversation like that, so your prospective client doesn't feel like they just got sold. That's awesome, and that's exactly how it should feel.
yeah, no, it was great. I think I had called you guys and was like, "Oh my gosh, this just happened." So, So as we're thinking about CEOs, agency owners,
Mhm.
what is a shift that, like, if every business owner, every agency CEO knew, like, they could
Mm.
make a shift that would help them grow, help them lead, help them be more effective in all the places that they show up?
Yeah, again, because my lens tends to be sales related, I think the
Mhm.
shift that I'm going to share certainly fits into that bucket. And this is not unique to agencies, not in the least little bit. And so, your CEOs who are listening, and this might make them a little bit uncomfortable, but we're big believers in going narrow. And so what do I mean by that? From a niche perspective, if you want to call that a vertical market, if you want to call that some other sort of specialization. So essentially, go from being a generalist into being a specialist, because we're firm believers that when you go narrow, that's where the gold is. That instead of stepping into scarcity, you step into abundance. And what is fascinating is, again, this is not unique to agencies. What I think is fascinating is that when you suggest to a business leader like a CEO that you should go narrow, that person may think, oh, well, for Pete's sake, I'd be stepping away from, so much business. But yet, when you put it into the context of, okay, CEO, let's say that one of your family members who you loved and so forth, well, you would hope that they would love all their family members, but anyway, that you really cared about, that person had a very specific type of neurological disorder. Let's call that a cancer of some sort. There's one institution on planet Earth that immediately comes to mind
Yeah.
when we think of something like that. And instantly the Mayo Clinic comes to mind.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh gosh, people from all over the world come to Rochester, Minnesota. Why? It's not because they're packed full of general practitioners. They are
Right.
packed full of the ninjas, the specialists. The only place that you can find them is in Rochester, Minnesota. And they literally
Right.
come from all over the world into your back door. Rochester's not far from you. And
Right.
they don't care what the cost is. They're not flying in from Jordan or Saudi Arabia or all over the United States and then saying, could you give me an estimate on that before we start?
Right.
Right? And we know this to be true. This is incontrovertible truth that this happens in a variety of, industries and so forth. But when we think about doing that for ourselves, we're like, oh, but look at all the business I'd walk away from. Do you think Mayo Clinic is worried about that? No. Go narrow because that's where the gold is.
Yeah, I love that. I do think it makes people uncomfortable, because it is it that scarcity mindset, I think a lot of businesses are run off of adrenaline and fear, right?
Hmm.
Like, and really good intentions, brilliant ideas, a lot of drive and fear, right? And
Yep.
I purposely call fear twice because I think so much of this, I mean, if it wasn't scary, are we even doing it for the right reasons, or are we showing up in the right space, right? Because if it doesn't push us, we're not growing. But that whole idea of putting that lens, this, super narrow, is, well, what about this guy who's right here and he kind of fits, right? And
Hmm.
then one thing that I've learned over the years, or once we finally listened to your team and said, okay, we're gonna buy into this because we can see the value, and now we need to live it out to prove it out. Um, one of those things was like, the eye opener was, okay, well, just this once, I'm going to let this one in who maybe doesn't fit all the criteria. And it went poorly. Can you imagine? Like,
Hmm.
weird. It went poorly. I just, shocker. And it was that couple of times. I'm a hard study sometimes, but it was a couple of times where I had to back up and say, okay, this isn't going well because we didn't stick to what we planned. Like, our plans are working for the right fit. Our plans are working for the folks that, really are in the alignment with who we are, how we serve, who we want to serve, all of those things. And it just, I love that I have the proof. I could have learned it a little quicker, maybe. Not that you guys didn't all try, right? But, it's one of those, it's just, it pushes it forward into that proof point of, I may have set this down, but honestly, the ones that I did take on, they cost us money. At the
Yep.
end of the day, they cost us money. They cost us money in efficiencies. They cost us money in, frustrations. and team members even, because that's a really great way to start burning people out when we go outside of the boundaries of how we want to show up.
One of the books that we recently studied that your audience might find helpful is a book that was written by Dan Sullivan and Dr. Benjamin Hardy, and the book is called 10x is Easier Than 2x. And I would encourage your audience to read it. And we have absolutely no financial affiliation with Dan or Ben. It's just an exceptional book. And so as the title implies, 10xing the size of your business or growth of your business, trajectory of your business, however you're going to define that, easier than incremental growth of 2x. Although I think most people would be like, oh gosh, if I could get 2x, that'd be really amazing. So it's a transformational kind of thinking book. But what's interesting is it's littered with specific examples of companies that have gone 10x, and not a single one of them was a generalist.
Right. You had me read that a while back. You had shared that with me, and I did. I actually, that's one of my favorites. It's actually sitting right up here on the shelf. And it's one of those that on the days where I'm like, what are we doing? I just need to work with people, because ultimately that happens. I think it happens to successful businesses, it happens to struggling businesses. Like there's days, right, where it's
Mhm.
like, oh my gosh, this is hard. Let's just take anybody who breathes. Ooh, that sounds horrible when you step back and you think about it, right? So I have gone back to 10x and just kind of skimmed it too, since I've read the
Mhm.
whole book cover to cover, just for the reminders. So I think that's a great resource and call out. So thank you.
You're welcome.
What would be a mindset shift? Like,
Mm.
again, we kind of talked about the fear. We've talked about the pieces of, how to get there, how to make the decision, how to stay within it, right? But like, what's
Mhm.
that mindset shift to have somebody feel comfortable in this space that can be so discomforting?
Yeah, I don't think there is comfort.
Okay,
I-
that's fair too.
the the reality is that, and your audience knows what I'm about to say is true, and that is being a CEO is a very uncomfortable thing.
Yep.
And if they're looking for the days of walking through the meadows and smelling the flowers and petting the unicorns, those days don't exist. In fact,
Mhm.
early on in our business, one of the members of our board of advisors, this is probably 12, 13 years ago, maybe, was a guy by the name of Darren Hardy, who at the time was the publisher of a magazine called Success Magazine. Anyway, and he said to me and a group of other CEOs, he said, running a business, 95% of your days are terrible and they're really painful and they're hard and arduous and all the negative sort of adjectives that you would use to
Yeah.
describe. I'm like, okay, thank you for painting such a lovely picture. And he
Right.
said, he goes, but the 5% of your days that are really good are so good. And they make the 95% of the days livable and worth going through because that 5% is so good. And I think that that's true. And from the perspective of every single day, we need to work to be better. Every single day, we need to raise the bar of excellence. Every single day, we need to lean in and ask clients and customers, the tough questions about how we can better be helpful, how we can better
Mhm.
serve, what we can do that adds value to their business. Every single day, that needs to be our purpose in whatever industry you're in. And so there aren't days that are, most days, I should say, aren't easy. Lots of
Right.
days are bad, 95% to 5%, whatever ratio you want to use. And so one of the stories that I've shared with you before that kind of exemplifies sort of the no quit kind of attitude is, the story that made Stallone Stallone. And I heard Tony Robbins tell this story once, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's such a great story. And I'll just kind of paraphrase it. And that is, when well before Stallone ever wrote the movie Rocky, and maybe many people don't know that he was actually the one who wrote the movie.
Right.
It wrote
Right.
the screenplay. And he did it in like 3 days after getting this burst of inspiration. But rewind for years, he was broker than broke. He was so broke, he had to sell his dog for $25 in order to buy
Mm.
food. He was so broke, he hawked his wife's jewelry in order to pay for heat. He was so broke that he ended up sleeping in the New York Public Library because he had gotten kicked out of his apartment and he was going to freeze to death.
Mm.
Stallone was broker than broke, but he had this vision that he wanted to be an actor, that he wanted to be in the movies. And so he ended up going to every single agent in New York City. And he told Tony that he was rejected over 1,200 times. And Tony's like, there aren't 1,200 agents in New York City. And he's like,
Right.
yeah, I went to each one of them like 6 or 7 times. And they
Wow.
all said no until one night he was sitting there watching a fight on TV where I don't know, but he was watching a fight on TV and he just felt so inspired regarding one of the boxers that he then sort of locked himself in a room and he wrote nonstop for 3 days, and that became Rocky. And so, but even then, trying to sell the script to the production house, they're like, "Yeah, we love the script. We totally hate you as the actor." And he's like,
Oh.
"Well, then you can't have the script." So he ended up selling the script for, I want to say it was like $180,000. I might be getting some of it off here. But it was like pennies on the dollar with a revenue share because the studio was like, yeah, we're not going to put any money into this. The total production budget was $1 million. It ended up grossing almost 300 million and won Best Picture. He won an Oscar, but they only gave him 200 grand because they just wanted to get rid of him. They're like, we're going to cut our losses. He obviously ended up being great. That first $35,000 he used, he went back to buy his dog back. And it cost him
Oh.
$35,000 to do it. And he put the dude in the movie.
Oh,
So
nice.
he never quit. Over 1,000 rejections, and he kept on going. So my sort of advice or mindset shift is if Sylvester Stallone can do that, before Sylvester Stallone was Sylvester Stallone, when he was living in the New York Public Library for Heat, and he sold his dog, his best friend in the world, for $25 so he could eat. Help me understand, what is your excuse?
Ooh. There's no follow-up to that, Stephen. Like, they're right. Like, that's, I didn't know fraction of those facts, so that's super cool. I appreciate you sharing. And it's like that whole thing should be on a reel for our hard days. So that is definitely a kick in the pants in a good way that says, get out there, do your thing, and be great at it for the people who are truly in alignment.
Amen to that. And that is not to say that I don't have bad days. Please know I have just as many as everyone else.
Yeah.
And then, as Shondell can see over my left shoulder, there's a photo on the wall that's framed. It's tough to kind of make out in the background, but that is my grandfather standing behind the lunch counter of his restaurant in downtown Canton, Ohio. And my grandfather grew up in Istanbul, Turkey. At the
Mhm.
ripe old age of 8, my great grandfather was murdered on the streets of Istanbul. Why? Because my family is Greek. And the Ottoman Empire at the time had sanctioned ethnic cleansing. And so my family felt the brunt of that. My great grandfather was murdered because he was Greek. And so at 8, my grandfather became the man of the house, and he dropped out of the 3rd grade to make enough money to support his mom and his 2 younger siblings. The DNA in our family instantly changed in that moment. We became entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And so he had this vision of becoming and coming to the United States to be someone successful that his family could be proud of. At 18, he got his shot. A few years later, he saved enough money at 26. He started his own restaurant. He came here without speaking the language and had $10 in his pocket. A few years later, he was owning a restaurant in downtown Canton, Ohio. He ran that through the Great
Incredible.
Depression, had 4 amazing kids. I'm biased because those are my aunts, my uncles, and my mom, right? But had 4 amazing kids, 10 grandkids. We've all been business owners. And we think, okay, what was the secret? He gave away more soup than he ever sold in the Great Depression because he believed in being good and dedicated to his customers. And my uncle, his son, later asked him many years later, said, Pop, why did you give away more soup than you ever sold during the Depression? And he looked at his son. My uncle and my godfather, and he said, I know that Jesus is coming back someday. I don't know what he's going to look like, so I'm just going to be good to everybody.
Oh,
So
I
don't
love
quit,
that.
folks. Don't quit. Be kind, be generous, help your clients, help your customers. That's what we're supposed to do.
That's so great. And being generous is one of your absolute superpowers. So it's a perfect segue into uh, what is um, what is something that you can share, you would like to share for folks to be able to
Mm.
learn more about you and predictive and just be a part of being able to soak up that knowledge.
We give away the best of what we got. So if your audience wants to go to predictiveroi.com/resources, you'll find our resource library. You'll find our book, the Sell with Authority book that Shondell mentioned in the introduction. You can actually get a paperback copy for free. Truly, it's 100% free. It's not like if you order it, we're going to ding you $8 for shipping. It's 100% free. We pay for everything. And then all of our, best frameworks, guides, ebooks, that kind of stuff is in the library. So we want to do our part. And Hannah hates this expression, but we eat our own dog food, right? So we want to give away the best of what we got in teaching and so forth because we
Yeah.
encourage our clients to do the same. Well, how can we encourage if we don't also do that same thing?
I love it. I love it. If anybody has a really good, healthy homemade dog food recipe, Hannah would love it.
Right now, if she listens to this, she's going to be like rolling her eyes. She's like, seriously, you had to talk about one, eating your own dog food and then mention me in that? Come on.
I might send her the snippet just for fun.
That would be awesome.
Awesome. Well, Stephen, this has been awesome. I am so grateful for you coming on, sharing with the audience, and I always love our opportunities to connect. So thank you so much.
Likewise, and thank you for the invitation. And it's always great to hang out with you. So thank you, Shondell.
Aw, thank you. Take care.
Thanks for tuning in to the CEO Shift. Ready to take your next step as a strategic CEO? Download our free 4-step CEO decision guide, the exact framework business leaders use to stop spinning their wheels and start scaling with clarity. Grab your copy at spadergroup.com/CEO-guide and start making decisions like a CEO today.